Welcome back, everyone. This is Dave from Korman Productions, my co-host Stacie from the Deep Dive TV podcast, here to talk about The Map of Tiny Perfect Things, another Groundhog Day, timey-wimey themed movie that came out in 2021. Groundhog Day was specifically mentioned in this movie a couple of times, and also Edge of Tomorrow was specifically referenced a couple of times. That's a Tom Cruise movie that we will probably never cover. We've actually, at this point, covered three Groundhog Day type scenarios up to this point. Groundhog Day itself, this movie, and Valentine's Day.
Valentine's again.
That's called. Right. Yes. Which I'm not sure where this movie is going to actually happen in the schedule, if it's going to happen before that comes out or after this. But I'm thinking about just dropping it and, as soon as I can get it up, because there's no point holding on to it.
It's within a few days of each other either way.
Right. The only other type of movie, the only other movie that fits this kind of theme that we might want to look at, that is Happy Death Day and Happy Death Day 2.
I didn't actually ever watch those.
You didn't watch them?
No, but I do have a whole list going of timey-wimey teen slasher horror movies.
Okay.
And I'm thinking that should be our theme for October this year.
Gotcha.
All of the timey-wimey horror.
Okay. You think we have a bunch of those?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So, the movie's description reads as follows. The map of tiny perfect little things. Two teens live the same day repeatedly, enabling them to create a map of things to remember. The movie was written by Lev Grossman. Only 2 writing credits for him, including the series Magicians. And he actually wrote this originally as a short story, which also had the same name. The movie was directed by Ian Samuels, 8 directorial credits for him, and some writing credits as well. Before we go any further, I'll tell you a couple things. One, this is not a spoiler-free podcast, so if you haven't watched the episode, I highly recommend go check it out, and then come back and give us a listen. Secondly, if you're listening on the platforms this podcast now will be on, please follow, and feel free to check out my YouTube channel, Korman Productions, where additional content can be discovered. If you're already on our YouTube channel, please like, share, and comment, and subscribe to our channel. All right, so I actually do have a shout-out this week.
Okay, what you got?
Catherine Newton has a birthday on February 8th. Catherine Newton, of course, being one of the stars of this movie.
That is tomorrow for us, as of when we're recording.
Yep. So, happy birthday. Not sure when this is going to drop, but it's going to be within a few days of this birthday. So, happy birthday to Catherine Newton.
And maybe she'll hear it someday.
Maybe, perhaps. All right, so Stacie,
I don't know. She's pretty big. Yeah. She's probably not going to hear this.
Yeah, probably not. But your thoughts on this movie?
I enjoyed this film. I watched it when it originally came out, which was 2021, so a few years ago now. It's a Prime original, so you can still catch it on Amazon Prime. And I enjoyed it when I watched it, but it's one of those movies that I just kind of watched and then forgot about. And you're the one who brought up that we should cover it, which surprises me.
And why is that?
Okay, so, it fits the timey-wimey time loop theme that we're currently kind of hitting, which, great, yes, if it's perfect. But, I don't know, it's a teen rom-com. It doesn't really feel like your typical movie you'd pick out.
You know what's interesting, though, is that I really love this movie. Yeah, it's not like nothing about this movie is earth-shattering, but I'm a sucker for it. It has a likable cast. It's a good-natured movie. Every actor in this movie is likable and charming, and I don't know. I just really, really love this movie. Kyle Allen, for instance, I know him from The Path. I don't know if you ever watched that series.
No.
It was a series that was actually a Hulu original that basically was kind of like a take on Scientology, and basically it was basically a cult. A series about a cult and people trying to gain control of it. And Kyle Allen played Aaron Paul's son. Aaron Paul, of course, being the Jesse from Breaking Bad. And he was great in that. And yeah, all these actors in this movie are up and coming for sure. I think they have bright futures ahead of them. And yeah, it's just a really fun movie to watch. It's
a fun movie. It's a fun take on the Groundhog Day theme. Mm-hmm. I love that they do reference Groundhog Day, like you said multiple times. It comes up. I love when we're referential like that, right? Because it tells you the movie's not taking itself too seriously.
Right.
That it's admitting it's just following a trope.
Right.
And I like that. Mm-hmm. Don't pretend to be something you're not. Just, stick it.
Now, that being said, taking notes in this movie was a pain in the butt.
My notes just feel like a fever dream, I think, of disjointed thoughts and ideas, because there's not a lot of organization
Right.
to what happens. It just kind of like scene after scene happens. We don't really know when days are resetting a lot of the time. There's not a lot of pattern to the things we're seeing because they're just kind of doing different stuff all the time.
Yeah, it's like every scene has so much going on in it that I'm like, okay, do I point out everything or do I just stick to the important things? And there are times in this movie where I'm really confused as to the timeline.
I have a feeling you and I are going to be losing our place with each other a lot because we probably did take notes differently from each other. More so than we do normal stuff we talk about.
Yeah.
Because, it is just kind of like very like disjointed and like stuff.
Yeah.
And it's fun to watch, but
Yes.
it was kind of weird to take notes on.
Yeah.
One thing that was easy, though, is there's not a whole lot of cast.
Yes.
All of my cast notes are on one page, which is very refreshing for a movie.
Yeah.
Even the last episode of television we covered, I had more than a page, so.
Yeah. All right. Do we have anything else to say before diving in?
Let's well, on that note, just in case anybody's here, if this is your first time listening to us, what we do is we're going to go scene by scene through the film, talk about everything that happens, basically. And again, it's going to be probably a little more disjointed just because of the nature of the way this film's laid out. And as we meet new actors, we're going to talk about them and their filmography a little bit.
Yep. All right. So the movie begins with Mark, played by Kyle Allen. 17 credits for him, including The Path, which I already mentioned. He was also in The Haunting in Venice, and he's already reliving the same day over and over.
Kyle Allen was also in 4 episodes of American Horror Story.
Yes.
In Apocalypse.
Which, by the way, I didn't bring up because I knew you were going to. So.
But then you just wanted to skip ahead without giving me a chance to talk.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, my bad.
He was in the 2021 film West Side Story and The In-Between.
Yes. Okay, so we see pictures that he drew as he wants to go to art school. We hear the sound of his mom unlocking her car door and driving away. And by the way, something I didn't bring up is the fact that it's kind of refreshing that we're starting this movie with him already in these cycles.
And we're never really told how long this has already been happening.
Yeah.
It's been a while because he's already very in tune with everything that happens. So we don't know how far into the cycle we start. We also have no context as to how long the entire loop lasted.
Right. No.
I think it was a long time based on some of the choreography that they have towards the end.
Right.
But, and that's one of the things when we talked about Groundhog Day that came up is that was one of the original concepts is they were going to just start after it had already started and not lead us into it. And then they chose to lead us into it. So this is kind of taking that other approach where it's like, well, we're not going to explain how it started. We're not going to show you him discovering it. We're just going to start you right in the middle of this guy's story.
And I think in this case, that actually works. I think we're already pretty familiar with this concept if you're watching this movie, so you don't have to show those type of scenes.
Right.
So we just skip over all that. And likewise, I feel like in Groundhog Day, they took the right approach there as well. Showing Phil, discovering him being stuck in this loop and everything leading up to that. So he ends up going downstairs. He sees his sister and his dad, who he predicts is going to call him a loser, his sister specifically. And he, prevents a mug from being dropped over. He helps his dad with a crossword puzzle answer. And he's basically pulling some fancy moves all the way around, getting some toast.
Yeah, because he knows exactly what's going to happen at each moment. Right before we met them, we did have Weatherman Dave.
Oh, yes.
So there's a forecast playing on TV telling us there's a storm coming starting at midnight.
Right.
You know what? It would have been a good nod if his name was Phil, Weatherman Phil.
Yeah.
But this is Weatherman Dave.
Dave must be a good guy.
He's played by Robert Gant. He was in 3 episodes of The Foster plus 5 episodes of Good Trouble as the same character, that being the sequel series to The Fosters. He was in 6 episodes of 13 Reasons Why.
Meanwhile, his sister is played by Cleo Frazier, 26 credits for her, including a couple episodes of The Unicorn. 15 episodes, which I really love that series. It covered a couple of episodes of that series.
Yeah, I remember you doing that.
Chicago Fire and The Big Bang Theory.
Yeah, 1 episode of The Big Bang Theory. And, that's kind of an impressive list for someone so young.
Yeah. I predict that she has a bright future ahead of her. Her dad, meanwhile, is played by Josh Hamilton. 109 credits for him, including a movie in which I couldn't help but cringing and sympathizing with him as he's getting yelled at by his teenage, or very young teenage daughter, titled 8th Grade. Basically, he just spends the movie getting crapped on by his daughter.
Okay.
And it frightens me for my future because my daughter's just about to be there. But anyway, 35 episodes of 13 Reasons Why and an episode of This Is Us.
Yes. He also was in 7 episodes of American Horror Story. I'm not sure which season. I didn't write it down. And he was in 20 episodes of The Walking Dead.
Yep.
In the last season.
Which, of course, I knew you were going to say, because I saw it and I'm like...
He's actually kind of an important character.
Oh, yeah?
In the end of the series.
Do you remember him?
I didn't, but then as soon as I saw the credits, I went, oh, yeah!
Okay.
I'm so bad with faces.
Yep. All right, so Mark gets on his bike to ride to school, steals some guy's sunglasses, steals a coffee cup off someone's car.
Yeah, I noticed he perfectly choreographed all of these small little tasks that he was doing, down to the second. He had the entire thing. It's just like, it's like a dance.
Right. And he takes like one sip of that coffee and then tosses it in the trash. Like, why not just leave it in the guy's car and let the guy drink it? Like, if he's going to take a sip. But anyway, he ends up admonishing a driver for texting. He takes his phone and tosses it into the back seat. I wonder if that guy is eventually going to get into a car crash, and that's why he did that. But anyway, he tells a guy where his keys are, which is in his bag, blesses a guy before he sneezes, and then he hops in some guy's truck, directs a girl to where she wants to go, and this is Phoebe, makes a Sherlock reference, which she's a fan of, before arriving at what I believe is his school. And Phoebe is played by Anna McCamey, 20 credits for her, including Birds of Prey, Due Date, which she also wrote and directed.
She also directed the 2020 film Souvenirs, and she was in 1 episode of The Blacklist.
So he reads in the library, an alarm goes off signaling that it's time to steal a plow. And then he ends up going to a diner to announce that he's the winner of the lottery, and he celebrates with everyone. He goes to the pool, plays with a Rubik's Cube, and saves Phoebe, who we saw earlier, from getting hit from a beach ball. And she remembers him, Sherlock references and all. He ends up walking her home, and then she basically turns down his invite to hang out, and he gives her a handshake, which kind of seems to confuse her a little bit. Now, do you think that if the day had continued, for instance, and like normal, that they may have communicated in the future and he gave up on that too quickly, or was that just the end of it? Was that just a complete blow off by her?
No, I mean, it didn't seem like they had exchanged any information or anything.
Gotcha. I mean, they didn't, but if, he had, been more thinking that the day would actually go on, would he have tried to do that? And would he have been successful?
I don't know. Because I feel like he was trying to get her. Like, this is his thing, right? He this is his quest right now, this is the girl he's trying to get.
Right.
So I get the impression he's had a lot of conversations with her.
Probably.
And maybe he's just kind of at the point where he's giving up because it's not going well no matter what he does.
Right. So he's basically failed every single time. Yeah. Even though she likes the fact that he, brings up Sherlock references and the fact that he's a psychic and so on and so forth.
I imagine he's walked her home a lot and hasn't gotten anywhere.
So he's screwed up every single time.
Right.
Okay.
Which is what he's about to talk to Henry about.
Yeah, he goes and plays a game with his best friend, Henry. Jermaine Harris, 7 credits for him, including the revival of Mad About You.
And 15 episodes of a show called Saturdays.
He is not doing well in this game, and he brings up the Groundhog Day-like scenario. We see some of his misadventures and failures, including mostly failed attempts to get with the pool girl, Phoebe. And, where am I? Oh, yeah. And his friend ends up pointing out that, they start trying to talk about how this might be a positive thing. And he basically ends up talking about his isolation and this and that. And I think Mark does not end up feeling better by the end of this conversation.
Yeah, so this is where they're kind of pulling the audience in on catching up where he is in this whole scenario, right? So we're like, here's all the things he's tried to do. He's done some good stuff. Now he's going after the girl. It's not going well. And he's just kind of like, do I want this? Is this good or is this bad?
Right.
Henry thinks it might be lonely.
Yeah.
Which is where he's at right now, because how many times has he explained all this to Henry already, do you think?
Probably a lot, and I'm not sure if it's this scene or if it's a later scene, but Henry describes Groundhog Day as the movie where basically Bill Murray gets with his hot boss, and I found that description kind of amusing.
Yeah, so I do have a note about that. He says that it's the movie where Bill Murray was stuck until he had sex with his boss.
Yes.
I want to point out that's not what happened in Groundhog Day. Go listen to our podcast if that's what you think, because you need to review that movie. It was made very clear they did not sleep together that night.
Right.
He just fell asleep.
Yep.
That was not it.
So, Henry, you don't understand Groundhog Day, so go watch our podcast and listen to it and, get educated on it.
Well, I mean, because maybe if he explained the real reason that Phil got out of it, it would have been helpful.
Yeah.
Which was, he had to become a better human being.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that actually might not have been helpful here, but it could have been.
Yeah. So we then observe him on the roof, Mark that is, watching the clock strike midnight, and then the day resets, and the effect of the day resetting is pretty cool. And something that I think that was something that we might have been interested in seeing in Groundhog Day.
Yeah, I really liked the effect. I thought, especially like this first time you're seeing it's really cool editing, and they're going to continue to kind of show it in various ways, but similar throughout the movie. Interesting or important to note that he resets at midnight. So we're not going through the night like Groundhog Day. It's not happening at 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. like in Valentine's again. Midnight is the pure cutoff. The day's over, and he resets as soon as that storm makes the first rumble of thunder.
And his day begins again. We see the same routine. He goes to save the girl at the pool, but a mysterious blonde-haired girl catches the ball instead, which he's never seen happen before.
Yeah, something new happened.
Yes.
And this is Margaret.
Margaret, played by Catherine Newton. Who I said is her birthday is tomorrow, or February 8th, or whenever you're listening to this, it was February 8th. 30 credits were including Freaky, which, by the way, I just watched that movie.
Did you?
Yes.
So it's not timey-wimey, but it is sci-fi.
Right, yeah.
It's a teen sci-fi slasher.
Yeah.
I like that movie, and I think that's going to go on my list of timey-wimey slashers, even though it's not technically timey-wimey, it is still sci-fi.
Yeah, and it's funny because I only watched the movie, well, because, the theme, but also because Catherine Newton was in it, and I was curious about it. It's a good movie, but there's some weirdness to it, like
any of the teen slasher.
I mean specifically the point where Catherine Newton's crush is in the back seat with Vince Vaughn, whose body he switched with, and he has no problems kissing Vince Vaughn. I was like, I don't know that I buy that, but okay. It's very progressive and all, but still, I don't believe that. No.
Catherine Newton's also in 14 episodes of Big Little Lies and all 10 episodes of The Society, which is very From and Under the Dome except it was canceled after one season,
of
so
course
we never get any resolution.
Right.
But starts off as a really great series. Did you watch that one?
I did not.
It's 10 episodes, and then they canceled it, and it's like, oh my god, what happened? We want to know. It's about these teenagers.
Yeah.
So the high school, all the high school kids go on a bus to go on a field trip, and they come back and are dropped off, and the town, everybody else is gone. Their parents are all gone. All the adults are gone. All the younger kids are gone. The only people in the whole town are these teenagers that just got dropped off from the bus. And they're stuck there. There is no outside of the town anymore. They're in isolation. Every road leads to a dead end, leads to the woods, even though it didn't before.
Okay.
And so it's like, again, it's a lot like From
Under
the Dome, because they're stuck there, but also they're like, what the heck is going on?
And there's no resolution whatsoever?
There's no resolution because it was canceled after one season. We do get the point that they're not really home. They're somewhere else that looks like they're home.
Gotcha. Is this an NBC show?
No, I think it was Netflix. It was one of the streamers.
Netflix is notoriously bad also for canceling shows after a couple seasons.
She's arguably the main character of this show.
Gotcha. Oh, she was also in Ant-Man Quantumania and Lady Bird.
Yeah, very, very busy young lady.
Yes, yeah. Okay, so, Mark
goes and tells Henry about Margaret.
Yeah, okay. And he follows her and finds a flyer with a number for a missing dog.
Yeah, and we're getting a lot of this through this film, where we're seeing montages of things happening.
Yes.
While a character's telling another character that these things already happened.
Right.
Like you had said, hard to follow the timeline because we're watching multiple timelines all at once.
Right. The number gets him some dude, and the dog owner has an 8-year-old daughter, and he's not thrilled that he's using his missing dog to find a girl. And then we see him go to the dog shelter, and he says he's looking for a girl. And the worker says they just have animals, which is a really funny line.
Yeah, this is the animal shelter employee.
Vanessa Padla plays her, and she has 22 credits. I didn't notice or recognize
She's in one episode of Fatal Attraction, the series, and 2 episodes of Homicide Hunter.
Interesting. So he goes to the bet with no results. And at a restaurant, he notices a crossword book with a $100 tip and thinks this might be his girl.
Yeah, I was confused of what he recognized that made him like realize she was there.
I'm not sure. Maybe the crossword puzzle book or the $100 tip was his clue.
Yeah, but like why?
I don't know.
Like, did she have that in her hand when he saw her the first time? Or
maybe. It's not really clear. But he runs out to catch the bus, thinking that she's on it. He misses it, but she is actually right behind him. He sees her and then runs up to her and calls after her and asks if she's experiencing a temporal anomaly. You know what? I'm going to start using that as a pickup line.
Don't.
No?
That's not going to go well, Dave.
No?
No.
If I go up to some girl and say, "Excuse me, are you experiencing some kind of temporal anomaly?" That's not going to work?
No.
Okay.
It'll work on all the girls you talk to that listen to us already.
Okay. All right.
It'll work on them.
All right.
But you're already talking to them, so.
Yes. So she is in fact experiencing a temporal anomaly. This is once again Margaret, and I already went through her credits.
And she she specifically knows that he means the thing where you live the same day over and over.
Yeah. Yep. And after a back and forth about him possibly curing cancer and how poorly that's going, she says she needs to go.
Yeah, I thought the whole reveal of like we're both experiencing this, it was very lackluster. She wasn't all that impressed. She didn't really care that he's in the loop too.
Right, no. He seems surprised by that because, hey, everything's just going to repeat over and over again, so what do you have to do? And he says that everyone else is sleepwalking, and she says it's like everyone else is dreaming, and they are the only ones awake. There's an awkward pause, and then Mark says he knows she needs to go, but he's got to show her something. She reluctantly follows, and it turns out to be a dog stealing a guy's cell phone. And then he points out a guy who's talking to a woman about his poetry or something like that.
Yeah, it was a poet. He was complaining that no one reads his poetry. He drops some quarters for the parking meter, and then his pants accidentally get pulled down. Now, I noted that the dropped quarters felt like a Groundhog Day reference.
It did. And, so her phone goes off, and she says she really has to go, and he grabs her number since they are stuck in the same day over and over together.
And she does agree to give him her number.
Yes. So, again, the timeline of the day itself confuses me.
Well, it's 6 p.m. when her phone goes off.
Okay.
She leaves every day at 6 p.m.
So right now it's 6 p.m.
Right.
Okay. So he returns home. He saves her number and memorizes her number, which better man than I, because I would not be able to do
Well, he doesn't have a choice because it's not going to be his phone anymore in the morning. No. So he goes to sleep memorizing it, and when he wakes up, the first thing he does is type it into his phone before he forgets it.
Right. The next morning, he ends up texting her. He tries, and then she basically ignores him. He ends up going through multiple days, multiple different hairstyles, and she's still ignoring him until he ends up getting a mullet. And he texts her and asks her, "Hey, you want to meet up?" She agrees to it. And she's like, "Oh, meet me in the library in 20 minutes." But he's like, maybe I look ridiculous right now and I should do this some other day.
Yeah, he's like, how about tomorrow?
Right. So they meet the next day at the library. He saves a guy from getting crap on his head from a bird. And in the library, he asks about the crazy things that she's done. She wonders what would happen if you were driving a Lamborghini naked, and then that's when time restarted.
Right, so basically he's like, you can do anything you want. And she's like, but should you? Because what happens if it's the day that sticks?
Right.
And you know what? This conversation's all you need to know about the differences between male and female brains.
Gotcha.
We also learned during this conversation that he's supposed to be in summer school right now. I mean, we kind of already alluded to that, but he doesn't go. And he talks about wanting to go to art school. She's an AP student, and she thinks he's kind of dumb.
But then she ends up showing him something that she has done, which turns out to be stealing her friend's car and driving like a maniac. But I guess that's only part of it.
Yeah, so she's going to take him to see what her thing is.
Right.
And on the drive, it's funny because she's driving really ridiculously, right?
Right, yeah.
So this whole thing I just said about, her like being worried about consequences, not really though. Because she's kind of like, well, if we die, it's okay. I'm pretty sure we'll just come back to life.
Right. And she wishes she painted her nails the day before because they are always chipped. But he thinks they're really cool. And he wishes today wasn't the day his dad wanted to have the talk. Not that talk, but the one about his future. And they talk about how many people died, and she knows the answer to that. 150,000 people die a day. And she says that if she kills... Oh, yeah, no, anyway.
We also learned that she wants to be an aerospace engineer for NASA. She has some big dreams.
I
that
have
wasn't
faith.
the word I was looking for.
I have faith in her.
Well, I mean, that's important because it goes back on the whole debate that we're going to have throughout this film of, do we want to leave this loop or not?
Right. She takes him to a lake, runs through a bunch of trees. And by the way, I am pretty sure that if I had tried to run through those trees, I would have ended up smacking into one of them. But she takes him to a special spot just in time to see a bird, which I believe is a hawk.
It was an eagle, they mentioned later.
And grab a fish out of the water. And he's basically like, how did you find that? And she says she was looking for the dog when she found that moment. And she was looking for the dog because she was trying to do something good.
Right.
Even though, it's basically stupid because the day's going to reset. And
I think she mentioned at some point that she thought maybe if she does a good deed that it'll end.
Right. But she also doesn't want it to end.
She doesn't want it to end, but she's trying to figure out what she's supposed to do to make it end because obviously there's a mission you're supposed to do. Right.
Yeah.
I just don't think she knows what to do with herself, which is why she has enough time to, spot an eagle taking a fish out of the water.
Yeah. So she ends up dropping off Mark and tells a mysterious figure named Jared that she'll be right there, and she says goodbye to Mark.
Well, I don't know why you call it a mysterious figure. It's the dude on the phone.
There's
no figure involved in this scene.
All right, but Jared is played by Forrest Funk, and he only has 2 credits, but I do love his name, Forrest Funk.
Forrest Funk. His other credit was a 2015 film called Convergence.
So Mark ends up jumping off the roof right before midnight and wakes up in bed. And we hear the same car beeping sound that is his mother getting into the car and driving off. Mark is standing outside the school when Margaret drives up all crazy. Like she's like driving up on the curb, clearly not concerned about her suspension or anything. And whose car is this?
Was that still her friend's car?
I don't know. Or maybe she's just stealing random cars every day. So he brought her there to watch skaters. He mentions that the good thing about skaters is that they are really bad at skating. But then he notices a girl skating up. And she successfully makes a jump off the ramp and to applause. And Mark...
And down like a flight of stairs or something.
Yep. And Mark and Margaret laugh and she admits it's cool. And that's all he wanted to hear from her.
And this is Skate Rat Girl. She is played by Mia Lovell. Her only other credit was 11 episodes of Camp Woodward as herself, and it appears to be some kind of skating thing.
Cool. So she must be a skater of some type.
Yeah.
Okay. So they ride a steamroller, and he asks about Jared, who she says is a med student.
A 21-year-old med student. He thinks that Mark thinks that Jared must be a little too old for her, and he seems a little jealous because obviously he makes the assumption that she's like dating Jared or something.
That is the assumption. And Mark talks about time being the 4th dimension, which she ends up refuting. She says it's actually not the 4th dimension. They end up eating ice cream together.
A bunch of junk food at the diner, which I said this is another Groundhog Day reference if they have a whole table full of like sweets.
And he says most of life is junk. Get the metaphor? It's just filler. But there are these little tiny perfect moments. She thinks that they are maybe supposed to become better people. And he says that usually all the tiny little perfect things are lost, but not today. And she thinks that's a disturbingly inspirational thought. But she must go.
Yeah, she pulled a Boyd.
Yes. Yeah, he always has to go. He asks why, despite being stuck in the same day the same day together, he feels like he's never going to see her again. And I think that's what kind of fuels him to do what he does next. And she says that he thinks it's because he watches too much Doctor Who. I'm not sure why that would be the case, but he suggests mapping all the tiny perfect things, collecting them like Pokemon, being partners, seizing the day. The day is there to be seized, and I'm pretty sure this idea is purely out of desperation because I think he wants to keep her around, and he thinks like she's gonna lose interest in him.
Yeah, but she doesn't want to seize the day.
Right.
She said she just wants to get through it.
Right, and he's like, yeah, well, so do I. He wants this one day. So yeah, he basically wants this one day, which is all that they have, to mean something. She ends up sitting back down, and they talk about it. And then we cut to them getting a bunch of money out of an ATM, which, where are they getting that money from? Is that from their accounts, or are they just like...
Well, we do know by later in this film that she has some money.
Okay.
She has a year's worth of allowance saved, so it's probably her money.
Okay.
Now, there's also that lottery ticket, but I don't think he could have redeemed it that quickly.
No, I don't think so. And they're basically sticking it in cards and under toilet paper and in random spots so that people can discover it. And she ends up talking about the fourth dimension and draws a little cube and a window.
She says that we live in 3 dimensions,
right?
But our shadows are 2-dimensional. So all we are is the shadow of the 4th dimension,
right?
And in order to find the 4th dimension, so she's basically been on a quest to find the 4th dimension since before all this. And she's like, I know what a 4th dimensional cube looks like, and she draws it. So I don't think this is a real thing. This is something she came up with,
right?
What this cube is supposed to look like. And basically it's a cube inside another cube that she draws.
Yeah. And then she's basically like, well, I give up until it decides to come out of hiding or something along those lines. I don't really know what this conversation is about, but, whatever.
But the cube is important.
Yes. She wants a methodology, like, hey, how are we going to go about this? Are we going to keep a journal? Are we going to do this? And he's just like, well, let's just walk around and,
Because, again, like cool you said, he doesn't really care about actually documenting all the things. Yeah. He just wants to hang out with her.
But he actually does end up documenting it anyway, as we will see eventually. So they go around.
We have a music montage.
Yes, and I do love the theme in this movie that they play. So, yeah, they go around making more, seeing more of the perfect things. They see a turtle walking on the road, and we see a biker taking a picture of it. An elderly couple celebrating her win at cards. I guess she got all kings.
I think they were playing chess, weren't they?
I saw like 4 kings or something like that.
I don't know.
Yeah.
The older one was dancing. I know that.
And then we see flower petals in the water arranged in a very specific shape.
And you know what else we see during this montage?
What's that?
The dog.
Oh, yeah.
The dog crosses their path, and they don't even notice the dog because they're too busy looking for perfect things.
Right. Basically, there's a man sitting on a bench, and then the truck drives up, and you see angel wings.
Yeah.
And after that truck drives away and they walk away, then we see the dog that she's been looking for all this time.
Right.
That she won't notice now, but she will later.
They find a 4-leaf clover.
Right, yep. A guy gets hit by a rebounding tennis ball. They witness a janitor playing, or I think it was a janitor, or some kind of maintenance staff, playing the piano in a storefront. And they're listening in as he does so. And then we see some kids running and playing and some lights coming on. I didn't quite get that moment.
I didn't get that moment either, but we revisited it a few times.
Right.
Something great about it, I guess.
Right.
The innocence of kids playing, maybe. I don't know.
She decides to teach him algebra because he's a nerd that sucks at math, and she can't hang out with a man who's not good at math.
Right, and he's supposed to be in an algebra class right now, but he's not going. And even if he did go, he'd only get one lesson over and over. So
Right. And she says, math is always perfect. And as they leave the library, they note a question mark in the sky. At least that's what I believe it was.
I didn't see that.
It was either a question mark or like an exclamation point or something in the sky. She tells him a secret, that sometimes she doesn't want the day to end.
Yeah, she says she wants time to be broken forever.
Yep. And he brings up time bandits and says, and when she doesn't know what that is, she says, "Oh, OMG," and she calls him on it. And like I was thinking, okay, come on, nobody actually says that. And she's like, when I'm saying this, she actually says it back to him. Her phone starts going nuts. Mark says, "Hey, just blow him off at least once," but she insists angrily that she needs to go. Meanwhile, Mark watches Time Bandits when his dad wants to have the talk. And he treats the conversation completely unseriously, talking about becoming a space priest.
Yes, he wants to be a space priest. And then he shows his dad a big tattoo that he got on his chest today.
I'm sure he got grounded for this day, at least. So next morning, he looks up Jared, the med student, which, I don't know, this works at all, much to my surprise, that he manages to go.
Does he even know Jared's last name? How do you find him?
Right. So Mark talks about meeting a girl to his friend, Henry.
He tells Henry all about Margaret again. So every time he meets Henry, and it's funny because Henry never leaves this video game. Every single one of his scenes is just sitting on his couch playing this video game and failing at it every time. And Mark just using him as like a jumping board of thoughts, right? So he's telling him a new story every time about his progress. And every time Henry's just like, what the frick are you talking about? You've never mentioned this girl before.
Right.
As their story is just getting more and more serious.
Right,
you know?
right. And his friend suggests a stealth date. basically take her somewhere special. And then, bang, you end up kissing her. And Mark is like, I don't think that's the sound effect you want to make before kissing somebody. I found that pretty amusing. So the next day, he tells her that they aren't doing a perfect thing and brings her to a gym.
The school gym.
The school gym.
They break into it.
And brings her into some kind of set, which is like some kind of spaceship set.
Yeah, so he's turned the gym into a cardboard space shuttle.
How did he pull this off in in this day?
He must have went early in the morning.
Gotcha. And he convinced all the art students to get involved in this.
He did. He said he bribed them or something.
Okay. And this thing is pretty awesome.
We don't know what time they're meeting, so it must be
Right.
afternoon, and he did this all morning setting it up.
So she's digging it, having a good time, they're lapping, and then they end up riding a bicycle to get back to Earth. And she rides the bike through the school, they ride the bike through the school, lapping all the way. He takes her home, and she's talking about trying to crash the system by, staying awake past midnight, but every time he just end up right back in bed. He grabs some beers, and she realizes that no one is home.
Yeah, so he's brought her to his house. Where's Dad? I think he said, but I didn't put it down. But Dad's not at work. I don't know where Dad is.
No, he's somewhere doing something.
Yeah. Okay. And the sister's at her violin lesson.
Right. He says he never gets to see his mom because, she drives away.
She works late tonight, so he doesn't see her ever.
Right.
Which is, he said, it's the hardest part. She works past midnight.
I guess so.
That's really late. But,
Maybe
couldn't he also just, go to her freaking job and, have lunch with her?
He could. Yeah.
He acts like she's, gone and he can't get to her. You could go to wherever she is. You're not stuck here.
Right. He says, so his dad is writing a Civil War book and ends up quitting his job to do it. She's thrown off by a question about her parents, basically completely ignoring it and saying, hey, what do you want to do? So they end up watching Time Bandits, which he brought up earlier to her.
Is that what they were watching?
Yes.
Okay.
And she's clearly into him. She's looking at him like, she's enamored with this guy. He says he has to go to the bathroom because of beer. She actually suggests going to the bathroom, which is something that I would totally say.
Well, that phrase is used in my house every day.
Right. Go to the bathroom, use the toilet.
Yeah.
As we watch on screen, we see a map.
Yeah, so she goes through his desk.
Well, first we see a map on the TV screen in the movie itself.
Okay.
At the end of the credits. And then we see her going through his things, and we see a map, which has all the tiny, perfect little things.
Yeah, so he's been drawing them every day, because, of course, the map's going to reset into a piece of blank paper every day.
Right. She's looking at it when he comes out. He's kind of embarrassed by this.
Yeah, he's like, it's still a work in progress, and he explains to her how he has to redraw it every day.
Yeah, she's basically like, you must have just drawn this up this morning. And she's really impressed, saying that he should go to art school.
Yeah.
He thinks if he stares at it long enough, he'll discover a pattern, but he never does. She says he made a map of them, and then he tries to kiss her. And she kind of seems like she wants to, but she pulls away and says she can't. He says sorry, he's embarrassed because he's getting turned down. He tells her that she can that there's something that she is not telling him, and that she can tell him this thing that she's not telling him. But she gets really angry at this and says, no, I really can't. So deal with it, basically. And yeah, she basically blows up at him, and he thinks they should just be friends and not mess things up.
Yeah, she's basically says, we're castaways, we're stuck together. We need to be careful.
Right.
Because we can't mess up our friendship. And I get that. There
Right.
is some truth to that. You're the only two people in the world that aren't, resetting every day.
Mm-hmm.
And you've become important to each other.
Right.
So that's true what she's saying.
Right.
But also, obviously, that's not the real reason she's saying it.
Right. It's clear that she has feelings for this man at this point, but she's scared. And, she has all these other things going on with her mother that we don't know yet.
But he thinks that she's just leaving to go hang out with Jared.
Right.
Because it's time for his phone call.
Right. And he basically says he wants more. And she says that that's all she's got, so take it or leave it. And, of course, he ends up taking it. She says she'll call him tomorrow, or today, rather. So he sits on the roof before midnight, and then he wakes up the next morning. He goes downstairs and asks how Mom is doing, after ignoring his good morning. And his sister still calls him a loser. Mark ends up commiserating with Henry, who again loses his game. And he starts to think that if he went around enough time... Well, he basically said that if he went around enough times that he would eventually get this right. But so far, that's not right. And so he's starting to get this little
Yeah,
existential
he's all
crisis.
kind of like sadness and gloom
Right,
at
yeah.
this point. This is his depression part of the cycle.
Yeah. This movie kind of lacks the dark edges of Groundhog Day.
Yeah,
but,
we never actually die.
Right.
We just kind of mentioned that it probably would be okay if we did.
Yeah. But at the same time, it's kind of mirroring some of the path that movie took.
Right.
So he tries to dodge his father, but he fails. He ends up catching him. And he says he ends up telling his father there is no future. And his dad thinks that this is pessimistic and glib. And his father says that he's woke. He knows about the climate.
Yeah, he's like, time is broken. My future's canceled.
Right. And then he basically goes on to call out his dad for his, existential midlife crisis.
Right. For quitting his job to write a book.
And then tells him that he should go and buy a Tesla. And, his dad is very unhappy with the way this conversation goes. So he ends up dropping by his sister's room to basically beg her to stop playing the violin, which he's been practicing forever now, literally.
Every night.
Yeah. And she asks about the combo with their dad, and he says he yelled at their dad and basically suggested that he might have told him to go and buy a Tesla. He finds out his dad did not, in fact, quit, that he got fired. How long did it take him to get to this revelation, I should say? Like, how long has he been in this loop that he has not discovered?
Right, and this is the whole point: is he doesn't even pay attention to what's going on in his own family, but
Right.
his little sister knows what's up.
Right.
She explains to him that dad got fired, and also the parents don't have a problem with art school. The problem is they can't afford to send
Right.
him, and that's why they keep trying to talk him into doing something different with his life because art school is too expensive.
Not to mention, she also goes point for point describing the exact psychology of her parents.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because how old is she? She's got to be like 14. And
I was going to say 13. Yeah.
And she has all this,
And he even says, he's like, how do you how do you know all this?
Right.
She says, I care about other people.
Yeah. Besides myself. And she suggests that he try it sometime. And he ends up asking about her game.
Right. So at the very beginning, the very first time we met Dad and sister Emma, Dad was like, you're coming to Emma's soccer game, right? And he's like, nope. And he never once goes to the game. And this is kind of compared to the Groundhog Dinner.
Yes. Yeah. And
the Valentine's Again engagement party.
That's interesting. I didn't realize that connection. But yeah, so she says she lost 3-0. And he says, sorry. And then he starts walking away, and she's like, yeah, you should keep working on that whole caring about other people thing.
I mean, he did finally find out if she even won the game.
Right. So he goes to his math teacher, who he's never seen before. I mean, I guess technically he has.
Okay, he's been skipping summer school before the time loop.
Right.
Right? Because he's like, I'm in this class, and the teacher doesn't recognize him.
Right.
Meaning he's never been there a previous day either. It's not just this day he's skipping.
Well, it's interesting because later on, he's going to be, like, super great at math, and his teacher's going to be impressed.
Because he starts going to this one lesson and learns the one lesson.
Right. Well, plus, not to mention he got tutored by
Sure,
Margaret.
but I think more of the fact is he just learned this one lesson and learned the answer to this one question he has to know.
Right.
This is Mr. Pepper, who I just really want to call Dr. Pepper.
I would think that would be appropriate, actually.
Mr. Pepper's played by Al Madrigal. He was in 42 episodes of Lopez versus Lopez and 20 episodes of I'm Dying Up Here.
So he's basically trying to run time travel theories through him, which just annoys the crap out of his
also,
teacher.
this isn't a science teacher. He's not a physics professor. He's just an algebra teacher.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't the right person to ask these questions to, honestly.
Right, and eventually he basically like, yeah, whatever, Mark, whatever you say is true. And then, basically leaves the scene after saying, I have to go and forget, do the same thing I did every other day and forget about it later.
Yeah, so Mark tells him, like, what's happening, and he's like, what could cause this? And he rejects all the ideas, but the one they land on is that a singularity could produce a local temporal anomaly. And a possible solution would be leaving the local area.
Gotcha.
I.e. getting on an airplane and just leaving where it's happening.
So Mark is clearly starting to have an existential problem as he and Margaret go about their routine of fixing things, going through record stores and restaurants.
And they can't find any more perfect things. They're out of stuff.
Right. My question is, nobody in this restaurant that they're just wandering through is like questioning their presence.
No, they were.
Okay.
You can hear people going like, "Hey, what are you doing?"
Okay.
But they're so perfectly choreographed,
right,
that they literally ignore everybody around them.
Gotcha.
And this is where I'm like, they must have done this a billion times.
Yeah, I would
out
imagine
of all
so.
the things they do, like, how is this one moment so perfectly choreographed? And that tells me they must have done all the things a million times.
Right. So he's tired of everything he does to fix things just ending up broken again. And he tells her that this is not working anymore as he stops right outside the restaurant and people are staring at them. And she asks, is this about not wanting to kiss him? And he looks hurt by the question. And when she suggests kissing one of the people in the restaurant, he says he doesn't want to because he wants to kiss her. And he basically tells the people that don't worry about this, you're going to forget about it tomorrow anyway.
Yeah, so really at this point, he wants out of the loop. Mm-hmm. He's like, I'm bored. I don't want to do this anymore. We got to figure out how to end it. And she's just like, this is perfect. Why would you ever want to leave? We don't have to worry about growing up and growing old or going to school or anything. Or worry about cancer.
Right.
Which we don't know yet. That's not just a throwaway comment.
Nope. And she, so basically he goes on to say that this is not living. They won't grow old or do anything that will last longer than 16 hours. And she's countermanding every single point that he's making. And she basically says, I know what I can do to cheer you up. She brings her to a model home. And then they go and trash it. And at first, it seems like this is enough to basically make Mark feel better, but it's really not.
They let some steam off for a minute, but no, it's definitely not solving anything.
Right. So after they're finished, she confesses that she always saw things as broken, but no one else saw it. And he asks her, well, what's different now? And she says, nothing. I just learned to pretend that everything is fine. But she doesn't have to pretend with him. And that's interesting. Again, this is a point of she's comfortable with him. She is into him. Regardless of whatever she would say, she does have feelings for this guy. And then
he tells her about the airplane theory.
Yep. And she thinks, the future isn't all that it's cracked up to be. Suddenly you're 80, and where is this creeping sense of failure coming from? And by the way, that happens long before you turn 80. Trust me. I think I experienced that now, or even 10 years before now.
Yeah, a midlife crisis doesn't come at 80. That's end of life.
Right, yes. So Mark says that this thing that they're doing is not actually living, that they are stealing people's lives, and mentions that his dad will never finish his book. His sister will lose her soccer game 3-0 every time.
Every single day she has to lose it.
And she says they have time. And Mark says, no, they don't. Time is the thing that when you spend it, you don't get it back. And she says, okay, let's do your airplane thing. And I was actually surprised that she ever agreed to this. But she says, all right.
Yeah, because I think, what he's saying is making sense to her.
Yeah.
She ends up chickening out. But in that moment, she's like, all right, let's do it.
So they're gonna take an international flight to Tokyo to try and break the cycle.
That leaves at 10 a.m., yeah. So they're going to go on that the next morning.
So at the airport, he says, if this works, their parents will freak.
Yeah, because if it works, they're in Tokyo.
Right. So she gets all the way to the plane. She's sitting next to him. He puts on a sleep mask.
Also, she asked him why Tokyo.
Right.
He explains that this will have them crossing the international date line.
Right.
Which means it will be tomorrow.
Right. And he's still talking to her, but he doesn't know that she's not actually there. When he takes off the mask, she isn't there.
She's gone. She got off the plane.
And
she skipped out.
He looks at his phone. He's got a text from her saying sorry she couldn't do it. He tried to get off the plane. But the flight attendants just stop him.
Flight attendant stops him. She's played by Yoriko Haraguchi, who's in one episode of The Blacklist, 2 episodes of Younger, which I'm actually currently rewatching Younger.
Oh, okay. And she sits in the airport and watches the plane take off. He gets in a new time zone, and it doesn't work. Time just resets, and he ends up right back.
Not a time zone, the international date line.
My bad.
The spot where one day literally flips 24 hours into the other day.
Gotcha.
It's that spot in the ocean where the time zones went all the way around and reset.
Gotcha.
And the second the plane hits it is when he resets.
Gotcha.
And wakes up the next morning.
So if it's midnight somewhere, he's going to reset.
I guess. I was trying to figure this out. Like, what time is it in where he's from?
Right.
Like, is it not going to happen at midnight that time?
Mm-hmm.
But it happened the second he hit the date line, so...
Gotcha.
I couldn't figure it out. Like, what time is it, though? But it's tomorrow, and it can't be tomorrow.
So he wakes up the next morning, goes out to his dad and his sister, and he looks at his sister, and his sister's like, "What?" He says, "Oh, I thought you were going to call me a loser." And she says, "Nope." And he's like, "Oh, well, you were thinking it, right?" And she's like, "Yeah."
Yeah, just because he, looked at her differently or something,
Right.
she decided not to say it.
Right. And he ends up asking his dad about his book. And he proceeds to go off talking about his book, all passionate.
Yeah, and Dad's very excited and happy that he asked him about it.
Yes. And he ends up going to the soccer game.
For the first time, he joins them at the soccer game.
Yes. And this somehow changes things where she ends up scoring a goal and does a little cute dance. All right, so I'm going to say that this actually does make sense. Having her brother there gave her an extra boost.
Yeah.
And so she was more motivated to try a little harder, and that's how she ended up scoring that goal.
Right. Or, some other kid, looked at him and got distracted or something.
Maybe. I mean, he is a handsome man, so...
but the point is, you can change things.
Yes.
And he's doing stuff to make his family's day a little better.
Right. And he gives a woman a winning lottery ticket.
Yeah, so remember this is at the beginning, we saw him win the lottery.
Yep.
Well, he goes to that same restaurant where he had watched the lottery being answered and slips his winning ticket into a pile of this woman who had 20 tickets in front of her, and now she wins.
And
this is lottery winner at diner, is how she's credited. Her name is Tiance Blackburn. She was in one episode of Tell Me Your Secrets and the movie Lost Found.
And, it's interesting to me because I figured that, with her not joining him on the plane, Margaret, that is, that he would become despondent and depressed even more so. Mm-hmm. But this actually seems to give him new life.
So this is the part, if we're going to compare it to Groundhog Day, where, Phil gave up trying to make things work with Andy McDowell. And decided to work on himself instead and just be a better person.
Yeah.
So that's what he's doing now. He's like, let me just do some positive things. And he didn't even look for Margaret at this point.
Yeah, he kind of just let her go.
Yeah.
He dances with an old lady and then claps for the janitor piano person.
Right, so he's going to all their perfect things.
Yeah.
And instead of observing them, he's interacting with them.
And, he's adding a little joy to people's lives.
He rescues a cat from a tree.
Yep.
And he goes to class. This is where he goes to class and does good.
Yeah. And then he plays an instrument with his sister, and he sounds like he's really bad at it.
Yeah, he's practicing tuba, and we saw him play the tuba before, but he's joining her while she's practicing violin. So instead of getting pissed off that she's practicing, he's like, I'm just going to practice with you.
Right. And then he attempts to do the skate jump, but... This does not end up going well. He ends up flying off the skateboard and ends up breaking his arm and ends up in the emergency room.
Yeah, and also during that whole montage, he talked to Henry again about Groundhog Day.
Yes.
There was another Groundhog Day reference in there.
So when he's at the hospital...
we meet ER nurse.
Yes.
Who tells him he's going to be okay. He's got a cast on his wrist.
Mentions Tony Hawk.
She is played by Bria Brimmer. There's a lot of interesting names in this cast. They make these names up.
Well, it's not as crazy as Robert Robertson.
No, that was the other show. We got Bria Brimmer, Forrest Funk. I mean, come on.
Yeah, Forrest Funk is officially my favorite.
Bria Brimmer was in 3 episodes of Wolfpack.
You know what? I want to get Forrest Funk on the show just to talk to Forrest Funk.
Good luck finding him.
All right, so when he's at
he's there, Forrest Funk.
Yes.
Jared, he sees him.
Yes, this is where we see him, and he's basically drawing on his cast when he notices Margaret from afar, and he ends up basically stalking her.
Yeah, he follows her through the hospital,
and this is where he discovers the truth
because it's after 6 p.m.
Right.
This is where she goes at 6 p.m. when she leaves.
This is the day, and this is where he learns the truth, that this is the day her mother dies. Her mother is played by Georgia Fox. She has 31 credits for her. The West Wing, first season, Memento, and quite a few episodes in the CSI universe.
So 297 episodes of the original CSI, plus reprising that role in all sorts of other CSI series.
Right, so she was quite busy. So he wakes up the next morning... And I think he's inspired by the fact that, he knows that Margaret's mother just died. And so he wants to go out and basically hug his mother.
Yeah. So when he resets, he rushes outside. Because remember, Mom's pulling away in the car. Yeah. He rushes outside, jumps in front of the car, and stops her from leaving and gives her a big hug. Because he hasn't seen her in, years or whatever.
Right. I'm kind of curious how he explained why he was doing that. But anyway... So he plays the game with Henry and tells him the entire story. He felt like he found the fourth dimension when he met Margaret, that he learned about things in himself he didn't even know was there, that she taught him that those things were there. He says he thought he was the romantic hero of the story, but it wasn't his story at all. It was Margaret's.
Right, and this is where we learn, like, he's not the star of this.
Right. It's funny, though, because he's the de facto star of this movie,
right?
But it's not really his story when it comes down to it.
Right, this is when he realizes he's never even looked at her side.
Mm-hmm.
And we, the audience, have never seen her day until now.
Right, and, you know, it's not unlike... I'll compare him... I'm not to this extreme, but I'm going to bring up Andrew from Solomon's Crossing.
Okay.
Who... It's not. In no way does he resemble Andrew. He's not that big of a jackass. He's a good guy, but basically he has the romantic fantasy playing in his head. He doesn't really know the real Margaret.
Here's the thing.
He doesn't.
If you're caught in time loop,
Yeah.
it makes sense that you're gonna think it's about you.
Right. Yeah.
That you're
Fair.
the star of the situation.
Right. Fair enough. And by the way, I thought the scene with Henry where he says that this isn't my story at all, it was Margaret's, is a great scene. But yeah.
And then we actually see how Margaret starts her day every day when she resets.
So yeah, we see her waking up. She's upset. She's crying. We see her talking to her mother. I'm not sure.
So this is in the morning.
Yeah.
So she wakes up and meets with Greta in the hospital.
She asks, so Greta ends up asking what she's thinking about. And she says, about a boy. But she messed that up. And her mom says, it's never too late. Unless you're dying of cancer, but not until then. So she's even making jokes, like when she's about to die from cancer.
Right.
Which is something I would do, honestly. But, she's replaying one of her last conversations with Mark in her head. The one where she was basically saying that, you know, she always felt things that were broken and she just pretended that they were fine. But she doesn't have to do that with Mark. And then as she does this, she's sitting on the bench. She makes room for the guy.
So she takes over the angel wings thing. She's sitting there. And I don't even know that she realizes what she's doing.
Right. I don't think she did that on purpose.
Yeah.
No.
And then the guy who's supposed to be there, that's supposed to be his moment. She scoots over, let him sit down. And what does she see?
She spots the missing dog.
The dog, Chewbacca.
Chewbacca.
Chewbacca
That's a great name
has
for a
a
dog.
credit. Chewbacca's played by Lucy the Terrier. This is Lucy's only credit on IMDb.
I'm sure this dog will have a bright future.
You know, and how many times we've seen animals on IMDb, and you're not allowed to list animals on IMDb, but people keep doing it, and it keeps going through because we've seen a bunch of these type of credits now.
I mean, if
we should try putting Lily on our IMDb and see what happens.
You should totally do that. But I mean, it keeps happening, so since there's nobody actually doing anything about it, people are going to keep doing it.
Yeah, but then we can't, like, it takes 4 days to get an actual credit of ours approved.
Yeah, fair enough.
Like having Scott Bakula added to a photo of us with Scott Bakula,
right.
Where obviously it's a photo of us with Scott Bakula. He was there.
So she ends up taking the dog to Mark's friend's house, Henry, and offers to help him with the game, explaining that she thinks that she can help him.
And of course, he has no idea who he is. She is, because he's never heard of her in this day.
So she starts explaining the situation to him, the groundhog scenario, and he asks, how many times have they had this conversation? And she says, you know what, this is the first time. She explains about the dog and how she found him. She says that everything they fix gets broken again, and Mark is right about that. But she finds a grenade launcher in the game and manages to beat the level. She realizes as she's talking and doing this that if you don't face up to death, you end up losing yourself. And of course, Henry has no idea what she's talking about. But suddenly a map appears on the screen, and she realizes that Mark was in fact right about something. And she leaves him with Chewbacca.
Yeah, she says, hang out with him, and I'll be back.
All right, so does this happen multiple times, or does she actually...
I think this is the last day.
This is the last day?
we're in it. Yeah.
Okay, so she goes... Okay, so she does all the stuff that she does in the same day.
Or she does it over and over. Gotcha. I don't know.
Okay.
Either way, he's got the dog when we're in the last day. Yes.
So she looks at a map and goes and reads...
So she goes to Mark's room and gets the map, which he's still drawing, apparently, because it's there, which also seems kind of odd, because didn't he give up on all that?
Maybe he didn't. Maybe somehow he did not. But she makes a fourth-dimensional map using the wall and lights.
She's trying to find the pattern, and she's like, something is missing, and she realizes it's time.
Yes.
There's times written all over the map, but she's like, that's what's missing, is we need to add a dimension to this. So she uses string to like do different lengths to represent the times, and then she does a shadow of it on the wall and draws on his walls, which, well, that's gonna stick. And she ends up drawing, and all of the tiny perfect moments make up the fourth dimensional cube that she had drawn on that store window before.
And then she eventually realizes that what's missing is 7 p.m. at the pool.
Yeah, there's one coordinate missing.
What exactly happens at 7 p.m.?
She doesn't know.
Okay.
But according to the drawing and the shape, that's what spot needs to be filled in. So the string told her the time, and the spot on the paper showed her where. So she's like, I got to be at the pool at 7 p.m. So she goes there.
And we see a montage of her talking to her mother while she's actually going to the pool. Her mom reassures her that she will be all right. She talks about the perfect moments in life. And we see Margaret approaching the pool where Mark is. His feet is in the water. He's playing with the ball. And she says, "You're still here." And he looks up at her, surprised to see her. She takes off her shoes. And I don't know why I love this moment so much, but I love this moment. And she sits next to him in the pool. She looks at him, and he ends up saying, the plane thing didn't work out.
Yeah, because they haven't talked to each other since then.
Yeah. She's looking at him emotionally, and I'm not quite sure what she's thinking as she's looking at him. She almost looks like she's not sure that Mark is actually going to forgive her for ditching out. I'm not sure what she's thinking at in this moment. What the expression on her face actually means.
I think she realizes that he's her perfect moment.
Okay.
And that this is at the end.
Right.
This thing's what's going to finish this little cube, and then they're going to be out of it, and she's realizing what she's about to have to face.
Okay.
Also, she's happy to be here with him.
Right. Okay.
So it's like a lot of emotions all at once.
Gotcha. That all makes sense. So she says he was right about the map, but there was one more perfect moment. He's still not getting it. He's like, yeah, I'll be on the lookout for that. And she says that she's serious. He admits to seeing her at the hospital. Well, first of all, she says that once this one more perfect moment happens, that this will end.
Yeah, she's very confident that that's the thing that's going to get them out of this loop.
He admits to seeing her at the hospital, that he knows what's been going on with her, that he can't take her away from her, away
from her mom.
Her mom, specifically. And she says when her mom was dying, that she wasn't ready to be without a mom. She wanted time to stop. And Mark is impressed by this and says, it worked.
Yeah, so on the first day, the real day that she got from Jared saying, hey, you got to get back here. It's time.
Right.
And she went, and she didn't want to wake up the next day. She couldn't face the next day, and she wished that she could not have to face her mom's death, which is how she ended up in the time loop in the first place, always stuck on this day where her mom was still alive.
She says she didn't know why he showed up, how he fit into things. It is time to go. She wouldn't have to do so alone. She says it's time. She was wrong. They were the ones sleeping. Everyone else was awake. It's going to hurt bad, but she needs to wake up now. And then she kisses him. And he says, well, that was kind of perfect. But then she says, well, there was a hair in my mouth. And they kind of laugh, and this is a cute moment. And it tells him to kiss her again, and so he does so.
Yeah, so their last perfect moment was them together in this moment having their first kiss.
And they end up cuddling up, and then we cut to the hospital. She says goodbye to her mother. In the lobby, he asks if she's ready. She's not sure, but they leave the hospital holding hands. The clock strikes midnight. We see the watch go past midnight.
And the storm starts.
Yep.
And instead of them resetting at the first thunder strike, it starts raining.
And then they run. And we see them show up the next day with a dog.
There's a really beautiful shot. They show all the all the locations throughout the movie. The pool, the school, the all these things. Empty at night, overnight, right? Because we never get to see overnight.
Right.
Because they skip it. And the rain. And we go through all these different locations, and then it turns light again. So we watch the night pass, the storm pass, and then the light of the next day come up.
Right. And then they go to return the dog.
They bring the dog to its owners because I guess Henry just kept the dog all night, wondering why do I have a dog in my house?
And then the movie ends. And yeah, like I said, it's not like groundbreaking cinema or anything like that. I don't think it's anywhere near as good as Groundhog Day, but that's an all-time that's an all-time classic movie. So like holding it up to that standard is, not fair.
Yeah.
But it's still,
as far as doing a, I don't want to say a spoof, but a take on that idea, they did a great job.
Oh, absolutely. It's,
but it is still a teen rom-com.
Right, yeah. And for some reason, I'm just a sucker for this movie. Like I said, I like all the actors involved. They're all likable characters.
There's one more credited person.
Okay.
Phoebe's friend, and I'm not sure where we actually met her. Assuming one of Phoebe's scenes.
It has to be in the pool or something.
Yeah. I didn't pick up on, like, anybody, like, I don't think she ever popped up in the X-ray on Prime.
Mm-hmm.
She's played by Anne Lois Bullington. This is her only credit.
Gotcha.
Phoebe's friend. And then I've got some uncredited listings to share.
All right.
All right, we've got a bookstore clerk played by Chris Best. A waiter played by Sam Brown. A restaurant patron played by Bruce Cooper. Bruce is in Fly Me to the Moon and one episode of Fatal Attraction. There's a barbershop customer played by Douglas DeLisle. He was in Alvin and the Chipmunks, The Road Chip. We have an airplane traveler played by Emmett Ferguson, who was in Everything, Everywhere, All at Once, and one episode of The Affair.
Well, that movie that you just mentioned is like is an Oscar winner, I'm pretty sure.
I never watched it.
No, yeah, I started watching it. I never really finished it, but yeah,
we have somebody whose uncredited listing is extra.
Ooh.
So they failed at making their uncredited listing. That's Lydia Houston. Kid falling at pool. We get the Lupkin family. The kid falling at the pool is Daniel Scott Lupkin Jr. Skateboard kid is Dyer Scott Lupkin, and the pool patron is Lily Lupkin.
Oh,
so that whole family got involved in that.
Sweet.
All kids, I think, those sound like.
Mm-hmm.
Bookstore clerk is Lisa Van Amberg, and pedestrian is D.T. Washington. And that's all of the listings on IMDb for the cast.
And obviously the most famous person in this movie was Forrest Funk.
Forrest Funk, who played Jared, the med student whose job is to call people and tell them their mom's dying.
Right. I'm kind of hoping this guy's career takes off just so I can say his name again.
Well, he only had one other credit, and it was in 2015, so I think he gave up.
Well, that's a shame.
He doesn't even have, like, other department credits.
Forrest Funk, if you're listening, contact me. I don't even care what we talk about.
You might be able to find him just based on his name on social media.
Yeah. All right. So
but no, the best credit has to be Lucy the Terrier for Chewbacca.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Stacie, do we have anything else to say?
Oh, that's all I got. It was a fun take on the concept. And
are you glad I recommended this movie?
Yeah, I mean, I'd seen it before, and I knew I liked the movie. I just didn't really remember like any of the details. Gotcha. But yeah, it definitely fits what we're doing, and I'm glad that you like this movie.
Yes. All right. Well, we'd like to hear from you. What'd you think of this?
Do you like the movie?
Oh, I love this movie.
I meant them.
Oh, yes. We'd like to hear from you. What'd you think of this movie? What'd you think of this podcast? If you make a comment, we will shout you out somewhere.
Yeah, do you have a time loop movie to recommend to us?
Yes.
Maybe there's one we haven't heard of. I mean, I'm sure there's lots of them we haven't heard of. What time loop movie do you think we have to cover?
Well, we definitely have to tackle Happy Death
Again,
Day.
I'm talking to them.
I know. I know. I'm just saying, we definitely have to do, I think that actually fits for Halloween month when we do that. Happy Death Day and its sequel. It's perfect.
And the movie I made you watch.
Yes, we should definitely do that one too.
Which name isn't coming to me right now. It'll be a surprise.
Right, yes. All right, so Stacie can be reached at.
I can reach on Twitter, X, Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky at TVN Coupon Talk.
If you like this video and want to support the channel, the number of ways to do so, you can follow me on Twitter at Korman Productions. You can join one of my Korman Productions Facebook pages. You can buy something from the Korman Productions store on Zazzle. You can buy me a coffee. You can join the Korman Productions membership for 99 cents a month. And of course, you can like, share, and comment on this video, as well as subscribe to the channel. And join the Korman Productions membership for 99 cents a month. I don't think I mentioned that already.
You did mention that, but you must be in a time loop.
Yes, I must be. All right, this is Dave and Stacie from Korman Productions, signing off.